let's get right to the operation. On October 7th, the 5th Marines are going to deploy forward right there to the eastern bank of the mouth of the Matanikau. They're going to run into a Japanese company dug in on the eastern side of the bank, and obviously they're going to get into a pretty good little tick, a good little. 2-5 manages to secure most of its assigned frontage further up the river, but 3-5, who's actually at the mouth of the river, is unable to break the enemy loose of its very, very well fortified position. Colonel Edson is going to commit his reserves to battle. He's in charge of the element that's up there by the mouth of the river, and then he's going to radio division for reinforcements. They're going to send a company of the 1st Raider Battalion down to join the 5th Marines, and 3-5, 2-5, and a company of the Raiders are going to be pretty much engaged the rest of this story. I mean, it might slow up here and there a little bit, but pretty much the rest of the story, they're going to be getting after it continuously. The Whaling Group and the 7th Marines are going to manage, to move out from the Lunga defenses, make their way through the jungle past Mount Austin, and they're going to reach the single log bridge and cross it. They cross the river that night, the night of October 7th, and I think they do this throughout the night because I think they're still crossing. Some of them are still crossing the next morning. But they end up, those that make it across the river end up bivouacking on the western bank, and preparing to move north from there the next morning to really, really sneak in behind these Japanese soldiers and give it to them. At the mouth of the river, Japanese soldiers will probe 3-5's lines throughout the night. Now, again, they're the ones that are actually at the mouth of the river.
Yep.
2-5 is a little further inland, online with them, but they're manning that sandbar area, really the only crossing point that's feasible in that region of the river. And the Japanese are going to be probing it all night. For the company nearest the sandbar, it would be extremely. They're also having to fight amidst a very heavy rain, so just making your visibility, everything, so much worse. Now that would continue into the morning, where again, they're, as far as 3-5 goes at the mouth of the river, they're just dealing with a very stubborn Japanese resistance. For the Whaling Group and the 7th Marines, however, they get up and get right back to work, making their way across, finishing crossing the river, and then moving north towards Point Cruz and the coastline. However, that rain is going to significantly slow their pace down. It's going to be near sundown when the Whaling Group will make it to the first ridge west of the river. There's a few different ridge lines. The Whaling Group will make it there, to the first one. They'll be the first unit there. It's about a mile south of Point Cruz. At this same time that the Whaling Group has taken up this position on that first ridge, H Company 2-5 has advanced into an exposed position between a Japanese company on the east bank and a Japanese battalion on the west bank along the river. And they're in a very crappy position, man, sure. and in a bad way. Now they will end up getting out of that position eventually, but the big important thing for this story is the Japanese commander is unaware that there are U.S. Marines on the western bank of the Matanikau River at this point, and he makes a very costly decision and orders the troops that are in place around H Company 2-5 to stay in place, right?
Keep them surrounded.
Yeah, keep them surrounded. We're gonna take care of them, without knowing that battalion that's on the west bank has the entire Whaling Group behind it, right? And has it. I mean, it has it to rights, right? And if they decide to attack, those Japanese troops are screwed.
I think it's the main attack, and just focus there.
Yeah. So, needless to say, that's that night down by the mouth of the river. They're still fighting to kind of eliminate this last little holdout pocket of Japanese troops. Then on the morning of October 9th, the Marines west of the Matanikau renew the offensive. The Whaling Group and 2-7 reach the shoreline around Point Cruz. They trap a large number of Japanese troops between themselves and the Matanikau River, and basically start pummeling them.
Just drive them out there.
Yeah. Now, the biggest crisis for the Japanese on the morning of October 9th is a little further west along a parallel ridge line. Chesty Puller and 17 will be walking along this ridge line and look down into a valley. And again, just to reiterate, the mountains and ridge lines are barren. The valleys are very thick jungle. And so the Japanese would set up their bivouacs in the valleys, right? Be hidden amongst all this foliage and stuff. Well, Chesty and 17 are walking along this ridge line and notice a brand new Japanese battalion's bivouac is set up in this valley. And so Chesty Puller, he calls in artillery. He has his mortarmen dumping mortar rounds in there. He sets up his machine guns and all of his infantry guys with their small arms, and they basically this battalion. The battalion, as it's getting bombarded while it's down in the valley, and then it tries to run up the opposite ridge line, and the Marines on the other side are just machine guns and small arms.
Get him, Chesty.
Chesty estimated that 17 had about 200 Japanese that day. Japanese records said that him and 17 actually killed about 500. So I mean, I take which one you will, but still clearly killed a lot of dudes. Hey,
man, he makes it look easy.
Yeah. I mean, listen, man, he's a fighter. You can't deny that. But Chesty actually ended up calling, saying of his mortars that they were a machine of extraction in this process, right? Of down in these Japanese bivouacs down in this valley. But having received intelligence that the Japanese were planning a large surprise offensive somewhere on Guadalcanal, Vandergrift is actually going to order all the Marines that are west of the Matanikau River, even though they're having extreme success at this point. Yeah. He's going to order them to disengage and return to the east bank of the river, which by the evening of the 9th, that same day, they will do.
Sounds almost like a guerrilla tactic. Get in there, gain overwhelming superiority, do your damage, pull out.
I do get why Vandergrift orders this, because he doesn't know where the attack is going to be coming from or when it's going to be coming, how big it's going to be. He doesn't know any of that. He's got a very large portion of the troops he does have on the island out there west of the Matanikau. And remember, the primary goal of this whole thing is that airfield, right? Yeah. He can't risk losing that airfield. And so, he makes the call to pull his guys back, consolidate, and get back into a defensive perimeter. And that's just what he does. Now, the second offensive around the Matanikau inflicted heavy casualties on the Japanese 4th Infantry Regiment, around 700 of them. And during this operation, 65 Marines would be killed. The failure of the Japanese to gain and hold a strong position on the Matanikau River would prove to have lasting strategic consequences in the Battle for Guadalcanal. It will significantly contribute to the ultimate Allied victory. The Japanese will determine from this point that reestablishing a position on the eastern bank of the Matanikau would be too costly. And because of this, they make a fatal error when planning their counterattack. They opt to send their troops on a long, very arduous march through the jungle to attack the southern perimeter of the Lunga defenses again. This time, those dudes are marching even further than they did the first time.
Yeah.
And as we'll see in a second, it is rough.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this clip from America Fog of War, catch the rest of the episode here.